Recording. Okay. Let me make sure the presentation's open, which it is, and I will share the content. Is Teams going to work for me today? That is the question. It is there.
There we go.
You all see my screen?
Yes, working great.
Good. You all see my screen now?
Yep.
See, I'm getting better with this, Kirk.
Love the Santa.
Yeah, so I've done a Christmas theme. For last month we had bonfire theme. This month we've got a Christmas theme. Right, let's begin. So welcome everyone to the UK WVD User Group meeting. This is our December meeting, our Christmas meeting. I think this is is it third or fourth one now?
No, it's more than that now. It's the fifth one, isn't it?
Wow. Okay, let's go quick. Right, I'll begin. So nice Santa Claus, obviously. Agenda. So if you never attended these before, basically we pretty much stick to the same schedule. So we'll do a quick introduction, and then I'll be presenting what's new with WVD this month, which is getting longer and longer every time I do this. And then, so speaking tonight, we've got David Nudelman, who works for Microsoft as a fast track manager. So if you're unaware, the fast track team are people who sort of help you with the product when you go to set up and configure it and any issues. So David's going to be telling you all about how to get started with WVD. So if you're new to WVD or if you've got any questions for him, it's a good opportunity to ask him. We've also got Kirk and Leanne. Are you presenting, Kirk, or is it?
Not Leanne's presenting, but I'll mention stuff when I need to. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Leanne from NetApp. She's going to be telling you all about NetApp VDS and potentially NetApp files as well. So that should be quite an interesting session. And then at the end, we've got a Q&A. So we like to make this as interactive as possible. It's not just us talking at you or other people talking at you. It's your opportunity to ask questions. So there's a lot of WVD knowledge here. So if you've got anything you want to know about WVD, please just ask away. So introduction to who we are. My name's Neil McLaughlin. I'm a Citrix and WVD architect. I work for a company called New Signature here in the UK. I've been around Citrix virtualization and VDI basically for the past 10 years, past 12 years focused on Azure and WVD. I'm the co-founder of the WVD community and also the co-founder of the UK WVD User Group. I'm a Citrix CTA, also a Microsoft MVP, and if you want to get in contact, there are my links. So Virtual Mike on Twitter, as you guessed, I'm from Manchester, and also the WVD community. I've got a website which I very rarely update these days because I just don't have time. Mostly spend most of the time on wvdcommunity.com, where we release a weekly newsletter around anything related to WVD. And there's my LinkedIn if you want to offer me a job with lots and lots of money and Ferraris and stuff like that as well. Nick, do you want to do
Not that you could drive anywhere in your Ferrari because we're all stuck at home still. So
yeah, that's true. I could drive it to Liverpool and get a 15-minute COVID test.
I need to redo this slide because it looks like I've got 16 years of experience being me. So, but yeah, basically, I'm a principal technology. In fact, actually, funny enough, I changed jobs 3 days ago. So I am now leading, and I can't even remember my job title anymore. But I'm leading cloud influencers and the cloud communities program now globally for NetApp. So yeah, it's a good thing I'm on this one because this is one of my communities.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, help Neil with this and love wearing crazy jumpers and just generally asking useful/unuseful questions on all the stuff. So if you need me, my details are there and love to get in touch and talk.
Good. So a bit of history of who we are. So The UK WVD User Group is just part of the greater wider WVD community that we run. I run that along with 2 other people, and we have Stefan, who is actually here with us today. So what we've got, I need to update the slide as well, because we've now got about 15 user groups worldwide. We gained 5 last week, which is nice. We got quite a big Twitter following, so we've got over 1,300 Twitter followers. We've got Slack channels, which is now 800 people on Slack. So if you want to, I'll talk about that in a minute. We've got a podcast, which I admit we've not done anything for 4 weeks now, due to COVID and some other personal issues. But hopefully we're doing one this Saturday, so that'll be released on Sunday. Fingers crossed. We've done about 30 newsletters and 13 podcast episodes published. So that's who we are. So the WVD community worldwide is run by myself, Stefan Digamonze, who's here, and Patrick Kohler. So Stefan runs the Dutch WVD User Group, and Patrick runs the German WVD User Group as well. So we're all very, very busy. So if you do want to set up a local WVD user group, let us know, get in touch, and we'll send you the details of what you need to do. That's what we've got at the moment. Again, I need to update it because now we've got Spain, Canada, and India, and potentially Brazil setting up as well. So we're growing. My goal is to have every country in the world. I'm not sure I'll ever get there, but we can try. So what to expect from us. So we're going to meet once a month, first Thursday of every month. So we're basically here to present the latest WVD news and hot topics. We try to present sessions by end users if we can, about real stories, about real implementation issues, WVD. So if you have done a real deployment and you want to give some good feedback, then reach out. Happy to let you present. It's open to anyone, not just like vendors and stuff, but anyone can present. So just if you want to get your fingers wet, just let us know. Obviously, we use Teams, as you know, because you run it. We do record the event, and we will make the slides available after the event. And hopefully, we'll do a physical event sometime next year. I was keep on saying Q1 2021, but I think even now that's a bit wishy. I think now we're probably looking at, I don't know, Q2, but we'll see how things go over the next few months. As I said, we built this for you. So if you've got something you want to share, please just reach out to us. Whether you want to do a guest blog or whether you want to do presenting or anything, just let us know. So the community is driven by you. We like to think that WVD as a product is improving by the feedback that we give, because the feedback that we give goes straight direct to Microsoft, and it gets Microsoft to the product team, and therefore it goes into product. So any little thing that you want, just let us know, and we'll try to make it happen. As I mentioned, we've got a Slack channel. So if you want to have an interact with other people, or if you've got issues with WVD, just jump in there. There's always people in there, and normally you'll get a response within a few hours, if not instantly. And there's also a feature request, and that goes straight through to Tom Hickling at Microsoft, and he'll feed that back to the product team as well. So very good, useful resource to have. There are contact details, which obviously you pretty much know. So we've got a Twitter account, and that's my contact details, and also Kirk's contact details as well. Okay, let me open up the news, then I'll run through that before we have our first presenter. You can still see that? All good, Kirk?
All good?
All good. This is going too smooth. Right, okay, so
hang on, we can see contact details.
Huh?
Yeah, we can see the last slide that you just shared of the group December one.
Okay, it hasn't reshared. See, I knew it was going too well. Let me just reshare that via Teams. 1 second. Right, sharing options, share, and news. Is that better?
No, we're still stuck on the other one.
Hang on. 1 second. Share content. Good at the. And it's done exactly the same thing which it did to me last time.
No. Ghosted.
Share. Hang on. 1 second. Right, I'm just going to share my my whole screen. Stupid Teams.
I always get nervous when I share my whole screen because I never know what's going to come through on it. So,
right, I'm just going to try it one more time. I'm going to reopen PowerPoint and then reopen it again and try and share it again. Okay, share content. Nope, won't let me do it. Right, I'm going to go for the whole screen. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yep, we're going to see Santa again, yeah?
Good. Right, if anyone knows anyone on the team's product team, please show them this and say it's rubbish. Right, so what's new this month? So this is just a summary that I do. If you want to get into a bit more detail, have a look at our WVD community newsletter. I just basically grab all this from here. So, right, so I've started off with some events that are coming up. Always events are good, useful for sharing news and content and stuff. So, the first one that is coming up in 25th February is the WVD Tech Fest. So it's a full day event, very, very good speakers, full of WVD content. So if you're interested in learning lots and lots and lots, then please sign up for that. It's not vendors, it's all end users. So you're going to get some good content. So yeah, definitely sign up for that if you're interested in learning lots of new good stuff. As you can see, there's good speakers. So Baz, Frederick, Freak Person, Jen Shireen, Marcel Mura, Patrick Kohler, Simon Binder, myself, Stefan, lots of people. So definitely worth sticking in your diaries. User groups. So we've got 3 new user groups this month. So as I said before, we've got India, Canada, and Spain. So we want to get that whole map yellow if we can. So yeah, that's good to hear. We're growing. There is a virtual desktop workshop which is happening on the 4th of December. So this is to celebrate WVD being 1 year old. So it's presented by Microsoft, so there'll be mostly Microsoft presenters. There's going to be a partner roundtable as well, which myself, Kirk, and Stefan will be on. So have a look out for that. So there'll be some quite good, interesting conversations around WVD. And how it's going and stuff. So the link there that you can sign up is free to anyone to join. So again, a full day of WVD goodness. There's also another community-led event on the December the 11th. Again, that's some topics which are not Microsoft, not vendor, but just end users. So definitely sign up for that. So you've got basically a couple of weeks of lots of content to learn about WVD. So that's good. We've got a new book written by Ryan Mangan. So you can get that on Amazon. That's going to be released, I think, beginning of next year. It's basically done the introduction to MSX App Attach. So when that goes live in the portal, which is hopefully very, very soon, that's going to be very, very useful. So if you don't know anything about MSX App Attach, give that book a read, because I've got a feeling you're going to be needing it very, very soon. I'm going to put the link there if you want to. I'll try and send out everything out afterwards, all the links to all the stuff, but you can Google it as well or just search for it on Amazon. Also, Timothy Mangan has written a book around MSX packaging fundamentals. If you don't know who Tim Mangan is, he's like God when it comes to packaging stuff. So definitely worth reading that. So he's going to teach you some good stuff around how to package for MSX. Other big news for this month is, well, last month now, RDP ShortPath has entered public preview. Very, very impressive so far. what this does, it basically enables you to get a direct connection between your WVD client and into your desktop. So it uses the UDP protocol. So it saves all the traffic having to go through the gateway backend. So the initial connection is to the gateway just to make sure that you're supposed to be able to connect to your desktop. But after that, all the communication is done directly between your client and the desktop that you're connecting to. And that's all done now by UDP rather than TCP. So I tested this myself and I got pretty good results. So before, my round trip response time was 29 milliseconds. It went down to 10. That's just over a normal site-to-site VPN. And also my available bandwidth went from 13 to 87 megabits a second, so quite impressive. So if you're in an enterprise environment with a good network using Express Route, then you're going to see a huge performance boost. So have a look at that. And on the back of that, Microsoft updated their RDP bandwidth requirements. I presume this is because a lot of people now are going to be using their existing Express Route networks or VPNs, so a lot more connections going through there. So be careful of that if you do run Express Routes, because if you've got a lot of WVD users, obviously you've got a lot more traffic now going through them rather than through your general internet connection potentially. So have a look for that. So that's quite good to know if you're planning for your bandwidth considerations. We've also got gateways as well. So Microsoft released 2 gateways in Canada and Switzerland. So if you're in those regions, that'll make sure you've got a much better user experience with lower latency. And also quite big news as well. In the last couple of days, Microsoft released Azure Monitor for WVD. That went into public preview. Obviously, before you could monitor, but it was a bit of a pain to set up, and you had to do lots of steps. Now this is a lot easier. And Azure, so it's all built into monitoring insights. So if you want to monitor your host pool, which you should be doing, and then check that out. I just realized I forgot to put the link in there, but it's available. So there's a nice article which tells you how to set it up and what you can monitor. So definitely worth checking out. We've also got an update for the client. So biggest change here is now you can list view for the remote resources. So longer names are readable. This was always a bit of a pain. If you had kind of a longer names, it kind of shortened them off so you couldn't distinguish which one's which. So you can now do it as a list if you've got a lot of resources that you need to get. So obviously the client now is supposed to auto update itself. So you'll hopefully be getting that soon. And we've also got Microsoft support in the WVD for web client. So this is a much requested feature for people who use the web client. I'd only use the web client if you had to, because the full fat client, it gives you much better experience. But if you have to use a web client, if you're on an older device or unsupported device, then you can now do the microphone support, which would be nice. So you can do stuff like Teams and video calling and stuff like that. So it's good. And also Marcel Mura has been keeping his WVD admin tool up to date. If you don't know about this, check it out. It's totally free, doesn't cost you anything. And it enables you to basically monitor your WVD environment and also perform actions like reboot hosts. And he's continuing adding stuff to it. I mean, all those releases, they're just from the past month. So yeah, I'm not going to go through each one, but check out his website, have a look, download it, play with it. It's a very, very impressive product for free. We've also got an update to FS Logic's client. So there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no new feature releases, nothing exciting. It's mainly just bug fixes. So if you're doing any new image updates or anything, check that out, but obviously test it first. You can have a look at the release notes just to see what's changed. We've got an updated WVD PowerShell module. So this seems to be in preparation for MSAX, which is coming in the portal. It should have been in November. Maybe we're going to see it in December. Maybe we're going to see it in January. Who knows? But these are in preparation to support that. I know Patrick Colo is doing a presentation on this at the next Microsoft event. So look out for that, because I know he has been playing about with these. So if you're intrigued, sign up for those events to learn a bit more about that. The guys over at Nerdio, they've been doing their monthly update release, so they've got a lot of nice new features in there. So they now support REST API, so they can do sort of integration with existing products. So like ServiceNow, for example. They've done host pool cloning, so you can clone your host pools for different departments, for example, if you want to. A nice feature is file handle management on Azure files. So I know I've come across it a few times, especially with FS Logics, where, for example, it locks, the machine shuts down or something, and the user doesn't do a clean log off, and it locks the file. And let me tell you, it's a pain to get rid of that if you're trying to track down what host the user's been on and stuff. And so definitely a good feature. So yeah, have a look at those if you're interested. Reach out to Bazbancam or the guys over at Nerdio to have a look at their products. Interesting parallels seems to be entering the WVD market. So they've gone into public preview with their Parallels RAS products. They're supporting WVD now. So they've got some features in there around FS Logics configuration, a user experience evaluator, and some metrics and some automated image optimization. So if you're an existing Parallels customer, it's worth checking out. Or if you want to have a look at them, check out Ryan's blog. He goes into a bit more detail about what the new features are and a bit of a review of the product. And also biggie is Azure Files SMB multi-channel. If you weren't aware, previously Azure Files used to be single channel, which was a bit of a performance constraint. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people went to use NetApp. But SMB multi-channel is now supported in public preview. It's not in all regions yet. As far as I can tell, I think the only one in the Europe region was European. I can't remember which one it was, but there's only one European region supported at the moment. Most of them seem to be in the US, so that'll be coming. As you can see, there's some performance stats there and increased IOPS, network fault tolerance, and cost optimization. So that's obviously no extra cost for it as well. So you get a nice little free performance boost. So again, I presume that'll be released across all regions sometime in the next 3 to 6 months. And that is it for the news. As you can see, quite a lot of news this month, as it always is. So any questions from anyone around that?
No, just to add, it was France Central and Germany West Central. So they're the ones that
okay, yeah.
They've not done the busiest areas yet.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they want to test it out and make sure it all, you know, crazy issues before.
That's it.
Okay, so now we can head over to David. David, do you want to take control?
Yeah. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that well.
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, so I'll be covering, how to get started with WVD. I personally got started about 3 times now. So I tend to build labs, and because they're on Azure, I tend to, run out of credit from the subscription and then try again when there's enough new stuff to test. And then and it's nice to see how the product evolved during the last 12 months. I run a small blog, endpointmanagers.com, with a Microsoft MVP called Rafael Perez, who focus on SCCM and Intune. And I focus more on general kind of technology adoption and brand new kind of smaller features on Microsoft 365. So, we do it for fun. It's not really a community. It's just where we dump the stuff that we're learning. So I have a long story of dressing up. So unfortunately, I didn't know I was supposed to wear a Christmas jumper. Otherwise, I would do it gladly. So on the left, it's me praising the Lord at Microsoft Spain. That was the very first global Azure bootcamp. And as I was lighting candles, I got the Microsoft facilities guy saying, please don't burn our office down, because it was a very, brand new offices in Madrid, state-of-the-art presentation rooms, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then on the right, it was my first kind of, how I got the cloud event. So I was referring to clouds of smoke, if you get the joke, on the right. So at the time, I was the head of IT at Metrobank, and I was covering the journey on how a new bank adopted the cloud as our home for infrastructure. So I've been a 7-time Microsoft MVP on the kind of Windows Enterprise and Windows and Devices categories, always covering Windows deployment, SCCM, a lot of Windows Intune around 2012, 2013. And I currently work for Microsoft as a fast track partner manager. So I manage about half of the UK partners that are inside the fast track program. And the whole goal is to help those partners deliver the fast track benefits. So why learn, Windows Virtual Desktop? First, it's fun, right? And it's fun in the sense that you get to touch kind of lots of different technologies and bits of infrastructure, and integrate, a little bit with the cloud and get more familiar with it. It's very useful because it's a tool that, enable people to work literally from anywhere. We used to say any application, any device, anywhere, the three A's. And, it's useful for your career, right? So great for your career because that's a skill set that's highly in demand, right? And from my personal point of view, I like exploring WVD constantly because it combines and requires knowledges of multiple areas, right? And one of the main reasons why I'm here, you got a very rich community, right? So WVD as a combination of tools has been quickly adopted by everyone on the space. So you see stuff from Citrix, VMware. I just became aware with Neil's presentation that Parallels is in here. Nerdio and Lakeside, right? Every time I can plug in Lakeside, I do because I used to work there, and I think it's a great tool. But as you can see from the WVD architectural overview, right? There's lots of different moving parts, and we're going to cover how you get to learn more about each of those. So when talking about WVD, we usually talk a lot about Azure because in the end it's a service that's running in Azure. A big part of WVD is identity in the sense of providing access and identifying users and access to resources. Identity is used across WVD in a multitude of areas. And when we talk identity, we're talking about Azure Active Directory, Azure Active Directory domain services, or if you're integrating with your on-prem, the traditional Active Directory. So there's, lots of options in there. We're talking about profile management because you still need to store and manage user data. We talk about, remote desktop services. We know the traditional RDS, which is in this case somewhat managed. We have application delivery. So we were talking about MSIX app attach, which is becoming a very big topic. We talk about VDI. So if you have some experience in VDI, WVD tends to be a fairly easy topic to cover. And as far as getting skilled up for WVD, we're going to cover some kind of courses and resources, but there is no specific WVD certification from Microsoft at the moment. And the main reason is Microsoft moved from product and function, specific functions certification to a role-based certification model, right? So instead of being certified on Windows Server 2019 or being certified on, Microsoft Exchange, you're now getting certifications such as, Microsoft 365 Enterprise Admin. You're getting certification like Azure Administrator or Azure Solutions Architect. So depending on the role you're going to play on your organization, you get a certification that will cover a big variety of products, right? That somehow makes learning, I would say, more challenging, but at the time more interesting and relevant. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the chat and I'll comment at the end of the presentation. One of the, I would say, coolest resources, I tend to love those posters. There is this Windows Virtual Desktop poster created by Microsoft. It explains, the service architecture. There's not really much architecture going on here, but there's a lot of different components that are part of, of your learning, right? It's a good reference material, right? You can use the QR code or the short URL. I'll make sure that this presentation gets circulated to everyone who registered afterwards, so you can have this as a reference. But this is one of, I think, the coolest resources for reference available at the moment. But before we can start putting our hands on WVD, we will need a Azure account, right? So if you get a free new Azure account, you have $200 of credit, which is enough to build your first WVD lab, right? To use it, with a couple of people, not for a very long time, but it's enough to practice and explore, right? It's the advantage of using the free account is, since the credit will eventually expire, you get to create a new account afterwards and start again, right? By refining your, step-by-step approach of building a Windows Virtual Desktop environment. I particularly like building labs, and repetition is a good way to, settle those skills in your head and become confident with the technology. And then every time I rebuild, I tend to focus on a different area, right? Other ways, to get your lab running is if you have an MSDN subscription, you have, a bigger chunk of credit that you can use. If you work for a partner and you can access the credit that they have even more credit, and they'll have a bunch of MSDN subscriptions laying around that they usually don't use to the full extent. So if you work for a Microsoft partner, make sure, if you want to explore this further, request one of their MSDN subscriptions. You should have no problem in getting one. And of course, you can create a standard paid account. Just beware of the resources you'll be spinning up and make sure you decommission them when you're not going to be using them. Otherwise, you will get a bill for it. But compared to, even if you go the paid account, if you would run a quick exercise of how much it would cost to buy, some cheap Dell or HP server, put a nice amount of memory to be able to spin up all those, a similar amount of resources and, disks that are fast enough to run those tests, and quantity of disks and screen monitors and everything else, it's definitely cheaper to do it on Azure. So if you don't have those resources, now they're more accessible. If you're a true beginner on WVD, welcome, and you're in the right place, right? It's communities like that will allow you to meet people that work with the technology, that can share the experience, share the resources, and introduce you to, places where you can practice, learn, find out what's new. So I think user groups are, I would say, top of mind. It would be the first thing you would do if you want to learn about any specific technology. A good way to get, I don't think this is really a learning path, right? So this is the official course at Microsoft. I think the only specific course open to the public from Microsoft, which is the learning path to deliver remote desktops and apps with WVD. So that's available now, part of the official learning path. You won't learn a lot about how to build and how to manage and how to run, but it's a good way to get exposure, to all the different components, right? There's a lot more information and there's no labs associated with it. If you are working for a Microsoft partner and your partner is looking to get a advanced specialization, so partners can get silver and gold partner status on different technologies, but for WVD they can only obtain a advanced specialization, so they need to be gold on specific areas, and they will need people with those certifications I mentioned. So for the advanced one, you would need at least one of each of those certifications, and you would need each one of those people associated with the certification to pass this Windows Virtual Desktop Technical Assessment. So it's basically a mini course on WVD, right, that introduces all the different components and asks you some questions at the end, right? So I'll make sure that this slide is shared. So if you work for a partner, you will have access to run through this mini course and, get this. It's not really a certification, right? But you get it's not even a certificate, right? But a recognition at a partner level that you completed this technical assessment. Eventbrite, right? Or Meetup. They are great places to find WVD events like this one, right? So just by doing a quick one on Eventbrite, or this might even be Meetup, I don't know. There's lots of events going on, right? So there's tech workshops on Citrix and WVD, VMware and WVD, lots of different opportunities to learn. If you're starting a real implementation, Lakeside Software has 3 assessments for WVD. So historically, Lakeside and their tool Systrack was very good to scope and do discovery before you do a VDI implementation. So they did a similar version of the tool that you can run a scan on your current environment and do simulations of what you would need to have a similar performance on your WVD, and you can do some monitoring of the user experience, right? So the main metric that you get from the Systrack tool is impact on productivity, right? That's the key measure. So for example, you have a massive WVD environment, thousands of users, lots of different pools, different images, and you want to assess which images are being successful and which images are struggling to deliver the user experience that people require. So this free tool will help you identify, which images are taking a long time, to open Word or Excel, or when you save or load a new file, how long it's taking. So you got lots of different metric points that will analyze and let you know if it's impacting the user's productivity. Nerdio, you probably hear a lot about that. It's probably one of the greatest tools, and they have a community edition, right? So if your total number of users is less than 25, you can use the community edition. And if you're building a lab, right, it's nice to understand what management and monitoring tools are there, right? And this is one of the leading ones. And one of their most interesting resources available on their website is, this PDF file to help, that helps you understand, how you calculate the true cost of WVD, because it's usually very hard to scope and cost stuff when it goes to Azure. So it's nice to have some experts giving guidance how to get those numbers right. There is a Windows Virtual Desktop kind of tech community, which is basically a bunch of Microsoft people posting the latest announcements. I'm leaving kind of the link here at the top, so you can see the latest 2 announcements that they did. It's an interesting place to find out, if you want to go, once a day or once a week in between user group meetings, you can still find out what's going on. And they have lots of, sublinks to other related topics, which is, a nice way to get familiar with those resources. One of the, I would say, most popular resources, also from Microsoft, is the What's New in WVD document, right? So that's a live document that gets updated every time there is an official update to the product, right? So they will list what the updates were, and they will link to it when possible. There's some great community content out there. I'm listing here the ones that I used to build my latest lab. So the Microsoft Tech community had a Get Started with Windows Virtual Desktop. This one is almost a year old, old but gold, right? As they say. A lot of the screens and resources changed. The guys from Policy Pack also have a very, very nice walkthrough on how to get started. But one thing that's missing, is actually seeing how it works. So the last resource that I'm leaving you guys here is a recording of a live kind of hands-on lab. So Microsoft partners that achieve the advanced specialization can deliver a prepackaged hands-on lab by Microsoft that includes presentations in the morning and then labs in the afternoon, right? And on those labs, you will spin, everything from the beginning, including, FS logics, setting up storage. You go through all the different kind of stages to get a fully working WVD environment. And this one is a recorded one with someone who clearly knows what he's doing. So there is no kind of hesitation. He just goes through the whole thing. I think it's about an hour 40 between the two. And it's a very good resource to see all the necessary steps and how the setup of those individual tools work. Neo covered those two, but they are absolutely, let's say, must attend if you're getting started with WVD or if you want to learn more. So tomorrow there is the 1 year since general availability, and they will cover kind of all the biggest developments since the product was launched. Right. So this is tomorrow, and December 11th there is this community Windows virtual event, which is, I think, truly amazing, right? So Microsoft kind of contact a lot of cool people to deliver this, and I like when there's external people from Microsoft because they tend to go deeper and further than what Microsoft people can, I would say, deliver, right, on a session. And I would say that that's all for me, right? A lot of this was kind of in parallel to what Neil shared, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions and point people to any resources they think it's relevant. Neil, is there anything interesting on the chat or any questions? Let me check.
Yeah, so someone mentioned that there's a maps for individual interest as well. So that's 75 for where you get £75 worth of credit. So that's worth knowing.
So maps is the Microsoft Action Pack, right? So that's
Yep.
one of the benefits. So even if you register as a Microsoft partner, so if you are a standalone person, right, but you would like to understand how the Microsoft partner program works, right, you can register yourself as a partner, and you get a very cool thing, which is access to the map, the Microsoft Action Pack, which is for partners only. But it gives you I think it's about £350, if I'm not wrong, but it gives you access to Azure credit. I think it's £75 a month. It gives you access to a lot of licenses to use as a partner, right? So you can't set up a tenant and sell it to your customers or anything, but you get, I think, 5 full Microsoft 365 licenses, 10 Windows 10 licenses, licensed through the Azure AD on that tenant. So it's a good way to explore all those cloud services. So whoever mentioned this, thank you, because that's a really, really valuable resource if you're starting.
Yeah, good. And Andrew's asking, any recommendations on organizations looking at considering WVD? Where should they start? I.e., who do you point them to?
I would say if you have over 150 Microsoft 365 licenses, go to your Fast Track website, so fasttrack.microsoft.com, because WVD is one of the things that Fast Track will cover. So that can be your entry point, and then you can raise a request for assistance on WVD, and then they will either assign a Microsoft person to help, or they will assign a local partner to help you with whatever you need, right? And if you have a preferred partner, check if they are a Microsoft Fast Track ready partner. So Neil's company is one of them, and they do a great job. Just to plug, Neil's signature in, but they are one of our, I'll say, top partners, right? Any partner that's a Fast Track ready partner is a top partner in the UK, because there's only 300 Fast Track ready partners globally. There's a massive queue to join. It's very hard to keep up with the program requirements. And if a company is there, they're definitely a partner worth exploring. Another resource that I didn't cover here is, there's a lot of partners delivering those hands-on labs. So make sure you follow, those big companies. They're good for your career as well, right? To know what the big Microsoft partners are doing. And those companies can deliver the official WVD workshop. And to date is the best resource I had the chance to experience, right? It's, this is what we're going to cover in the lab, and the lab is basically the typical step-by-step, but then you get, a subscription that has all the power and resources to test everything. And you usually have 2 days to complete the workshop, and sometimes partners will ask for extension for another couple of days, so you can play around with what you built. So it's not a long-term thing. But yeah, if you are a corporation, you can possibly get depending on the licenses you have, you might have some sandbox of Azure to play with as well.
Good. Thanks for that. Any other questions for David before he leaves us? Nope. Okay, good. So thanks for David. That was a great session. Learned quite a bit.
Yeah,
there.
no, thanks guy for the opportunity. The interesting question: what's the future of WVD, right? So I think WVD is probably one of the most exciting topics, right? So WVD is not part of usually what a partner would deliver inside Fast Track, even though it's inside the overall Fast Track scope. So I shouldn't even be looking at it as part of my job, but it's the absolutely most exciting and most future-proof technology. And it'll possibly be, after Teams was this year, I think WVD will be, the most requested technology for next year, because now that people can successfully, hold meetings from anywhere, right? As Neil asked at the beginning, right? I'm usually based in South Croydon in the UK, and I'm now at Maceió in Brazil, right? A city that no one ever heard before, even though it's a capital of a very small, tiny state, right? All you need is good internet connectivity. But when I'm struggling, because I'm using a quite simple laptop, if I'm struggling to run my reports, I just jump on a WVD session, and I can do everything as normal. So the future for WVD is absolutely outstanding, especially because of one of the first slides, right? The community around it is great. Citrix is fully invested, VMware is fully invested, and now we're seeing that Parallels is fully invested. So if all those massive virtualization companies are invested on it, you can guarantee that the future is very bright. Thanks for the question. I think is the most exciting bit of this topic was, replying to this question. Maybe I like it too much, right?
No, definitely. So I think next year we're going to see WVD's massively going to blow up, because one thing which stops a lot of companies is single sign-on capability, and we're going to get that next year. So, and as you said, the features just keep on coming. So it's definitely growing at a rapid pace, and we'll continue to do so, I think. So good place to be for sure.
Yeah, that's why that workshop tomorrow, don't miss it. It is interesting, right? You will see how much a product can evolve in a year, right?
Yeah.
And it was great timing as well for WVD, right? There's never been such a demand.
Exactly. They couldn't have timed
So
it better.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for this opportunity.
Good.
And feel free to reach out. I do have a Twitter account that I never use, so if you want to reach out, just use LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to reply or connect you to the right people.
Good. Andrew's just asking a question. Can you use WVD offline? No, you can't. It's a cloud service, so if you've got the internet connection, then you don't have WVD basically. So.
Yeah, don't try to use it on the train from Liverpool or Manchester to London, because you're not going to have a great experience.
Good. Right.
That should change with 5G, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, in the 200 meters that you can get it per city, yeah, it's great there.
Well, the train hopefully will be able to provide you with a decent connection. Eventually. All right. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
No worries. Thank you.
All right.
Right. Leanne, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Do you want to take control?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to present, so I'm going to just introduce myself and then present Mike, who is our product leader for VDS. And David, I just wanted to tell you I will be in touch with you because I was missing a very important logo on your slides from our logo from NetApp for VDS. So I'll be contacting you after this call.
That's fine.
Yeah. So guys, thank you for the opportunity for us to speak. I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Leanne. I joined NetApp half a year ago after NetApp acquired CloudJumper. We rebranded it to VDS, Virtual Desktop Services, and I was hired to work with Microsoft and the Microsoft channel in EMEA to build a channel around this product. And since this week, I moved into a new job, and I will be the new Microsoft Alliance Manager in EMEA. So still we'll be working very closely with Microsoft, and as I can already tell from this call, we need to work a lot on our awareness in EMEA. So that's what we'll be doing. And I used to work for Microsoft for 10 years, building a channel around Office 365, Azure, and as a global black belt, so I'm very familiar with Microsoft. And I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. I will share some documentation after the call, because if you're interested to learning more about VDS, how to become a partner for VDS in EMEA, then you can reach out to me, and I will work with you on covering that. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike Walsh is our product manager. He's based out of the US. And we're also very excited to let you know that we hired EMEA resources in Mike's team this week, and that's Stefan. You probably all know him. He's also on the call. So he joined the 1st of December. So he's just very fresh. But otherwise, I will let you say something yourself, Stefan. But he joined our team, and he will be working in Mike's team as the product lead for VDS in EMEA. Mike, are you on, or
Yep.
Stefan? Yeah. Okay. Super.
Yeah. So Stefan just joined us this week. Very happy, and obviously Kirk is also NetApp too. So we're slowly just going to infiltrate all the different community groups. So you just see us everywhere for that piece. Sorry, I got on a little bit late. Also missed, like David, missed the jumper notice. Did catch the part though that Neil's, if I understand correctly, Neil's going to host a Lamborghini convoy between the user groups once we get to see everybody in person again. So I'd prefer the dark green or the black one, Neil, if we can do that when we start doing those in 2021. I'll put my preference in early this year.
Not a problem. I'll get the order in for you, Mike.
There we go. Neil's been a great community leader here. Met him a while ago now, and been very encouraged by just what he and the co-founders created out of the group. So thanks for the time today, guys. As Leanne mentioned, we're virtual desktop service was Cloud Jumper. We are a control plane that helps with VDS deployments and management. I won't go through all the basics today because I think we wanted to go to the other end of the spectrum. One of the things I love about these groups is that we get to talk about different topics. And today I want to talk a little bit about the other end, some of the scaling issues that we tend to run into with bigger enterprises. And this hits us in a couple of different places. So I'm going to start out actually by giving credit to, I'm going to share my desktop here and see if I can pull off the trick here with PowerPoint. Let's see if we see that. Do we have that there?
Good.
Okay, great. So I think just going to steal a couple of slides. Christian, who's already been mentioned in this from Microsoft, and my colleague Frank Anderson presented this at our Insights presentation. And their whole topic was, okay, you love WVD, you've worked with it, now you got to scale it in production. And we all know there's a couple of limitations. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of the pieces here and then maybe propose a solution that we use in virtual desktop service, but is also applicable if you're using products like our Azure NetApp Files product to think about segmentation across different multiple locations, but you can also use it in the same location. And I would just reiterate some of the stuff that Neil mentioned at the top, just talking to some of the analysts, and we just had Gartner at our Insights presentation, and they're almost, the way they phrase stuff, it's almost a surprise that virtual desktops and remote work actually worked this year, the strain that we put the systems under. But their analysis, and after talking to customers, is that a lot of people have moved to desktops and virtual desktops and use that for remote work from a whole wide variety of situations. We were just joking here not to put on the train. I did see it being used in a Tesla center console. Saw that. I think there was one of the folks presented this like 6 months ago in one of the community groups. So it is useful from a variety of places, that universal access that David talked about. We're getting there. But then on the other end of that, we have to make sure that as we get more users, and this could be, it used to be, 10, 15% of the company. It could be as much as 75% of the company for a lot of customers now. How do we get all those people in and scale and keep the performance acceptable to end users? And WVD has a lot to do with that because we can use the tools and the networking and the security and the load balancing that the Azure regions provide us, but we have to make sure that we configure it correctly to take advantage of that. So this is just a couple slides here. These are some of the limitations and recommendations that came from the presentation. Mostly the overall theme I wanted to get across to people is that as we go through and say, okay, 400 host pools per workspace, number of VMs, and then application groups and things like that, as we limit those by the host pool and the WVD workspace, we want to be able to say, okay, that's great, but if I run out of capacity, how do I handle that as I look at a bigger set of users? And again, as I said, this is multi-location. As we follow the general rule, try and keep the machines as close to the users as possible. But also, if we're in the same location and just have a lot of people, and maybe they all need individual machines instead of pooled machines, we still want to be able to do that. So if we look at the 3 slides here, you go through all these details and you're like, okay, now I sort of have a puzzle piece to put together when I'm talking about how do I get this done in terms of resource groups, in terms of Azure regions, and then do I start doing things like split between subscriptions? Because a lot of the limitations we run into, especially on the API side, are limited by subscription. And that segmentation works for a lot of Azure services, but as we start multiplying the instances of host pool machines and things like that, that's where we tend to start running into stuff. With VDS, we do a number of API calls. We're one of the first when RDMI first came out and then transitioned to WVD. We really focused on the calls to the API. Didn't get all that involved in the post. The PowerShell scripting and stuff like that. And what we ran into is those API limits can add up if you're just doing things like checking on the status of the machine or trying to resize something, or we deploy a lot of machines very quickly. We can do, I think the most we did was about 425 in one setup per instance of deployment. Those start to really run in those API limits as well. So that's a consideration and a constraint that we have. The last constraint I'll mention is there are a lot of organizations that will do separate environments for security reasons. So a resource group might be dedicated to networks and then location, and a different resource group might be dedicated to the host pool and then location. So we start talking to the security people and the people who manage Azure in some organizations. And while they want to extend and use WVD as their primary virtual desktop environment, they do have restrictions and limitations so that they can still comply with governance and security restrictions. So we try and address both of those. So that's the problem set. How do we get this set up for lots of users or users in different places? And the recommendation is to start thinking of it in terms of pods, right? So there's a couple elements that we need to worry about. I'll address two specifically. These diagrams go through a lot of detail, but let me just click through a couple here. So we rely on first of all, the gateways that Microsoft provides with WVD. So that part of the problem is pretty much solved for us as long as we allocate our host pools in the places that, again, are closest to the user community. So we have that piece of it worked on. The second piece is that we want to host all these session servers in the host pools in pods that are big enough to make sure that we have management control, but aren't starting to push the limits of the resource constraints or the API constraints that we have. So in this case, we're looking at setting a reasonable limit for the number of machines we want to put in per subscription, and then going with parallel subscriptions if we choose to, so that we can have access to those machines and treat them all the same, but not have to have a 95% utilization, and then we realize that we need another 10%. We're sort of out of that. So the concept here is to create the pod at a size that you feel comfortable, and then once you get to a saturation point of like 70-75%, probably the next time to build the pod. The last piece is the storage element, and Kirk can tell you, the last thing sometimes we tend to get to in an architectural discussion is that we want our storage layer that's associated with the host pool sets to be sized correctly and located, again, close enough to the machines to make a difference as well. So when we look at an Azure NetApp Files deployment, we're looking at, do we do separate capacity pools and volumes so that we can support the user profiles first, but then as we start talking about MSIX app attach applications, again, storage is going to play a role because we want those to load off the storage layer and into the sessions as quickly as possible. We want to architect it so that we segment those. So the whole idea here as we look at the layout is to structure this so that we put all the pieces together and have these pods set up so that we can scale users. And again, this could be, subscription 1 could be in one location, subscription 2 could be in another location. You can all do in the same subscription if the size is small enough, but given the segmentation Microsoft provides, subscriptions, resource groups, and then the networking in terms of the VNet and the subnet, a lot of times it makes sense to say, okay, let's look at our segmentation and see where we're going to put our pods together. So I do have customers that are everything in the same subscription, but broken down by resource group, or they decide to do different subscriptions so that they have plenty of growth and plenty of API overhead or headroom as they go along. So it's basically our choice on that piece of it. The other thing to look at here is that as I described all those components, I think everybody who's been through WVD, the first thing that should leap to your mind is all those 25-digit GUIDs that show up to say, okay, subscription ID, and then my resource group ID, the list of attributes we need to drive things like creating the host pool machines. That's a lot of stuff to keep track of if we're not managing it with a control plane. And this is where the VDMS layer that we have in the diagram comes in. And I'll jump over to the application to show you here for a minute how we do that. But the concept of what we call a VDS site is to take all that information I just went through really quickly and say, okay, there's a way for us to specify that once in this concept of a VDS site. And then every time we start working with things like host pools and then users and groups and things like that, we don't have to remember all of those in our architecture. We just simply point to the site, say, well, I want a new host pool 6, let's say, in site. And then the VDS automation will handle the rest of the configuration for you. So it knows which subnet and VNet to talk to. It knows which resource group we're going to put this in. It knows which subscription it's talking to, because we would have different security accounts in that. And so VDS allows us to say, okay, we get all the benefits of this segmentation or this pod concept without all the overhead and headache of trying to manage the architecture ourselves. So that's the whole idea of the concept, but the approach is pretty consistent with other cloud horizontal scaling approaches, but it is one thing that we tend to run into as we get into customers that are moving to thousands of users. So that was the high-speed flyby of the problem and sort of the schematic. Let's take a real quick look here in the application. And this is our V6 that just came out at the Insights a couple weeks ago. It's still in preview, so we may run into an issue here or there, but I think we'll demonstrate some of the capability here, so you get a good idea of what we're talking about. So when we talk about a WVD architecture, we start with the concept of a deployment, which is simply the physical implementation. So which Azure subscription, where does it live, those types of things, so that we can talk to it from this web application, which is universal to all of our customers. But when we drive down into a deployment, we've added this concept of sites to say, okay, we know, because we go across all the clouds, we know this is an Azure implementation. We know that we're running WVD. We've already made those determinations when we did our first deployment. But now we want to start talking about how do we do the elements of splitting this up. So the first thing we did is we said, okay, we're going to go multiple site here. So my site 1 in this case was the original one that's created automatically by VDS. And it keeps track of all the information elements that I just talked about. So all those GUIDs I just mentioned, they're right here. The subscription, the tenant, which client is this running in, even stuff like the recovery service vault, all the stuff that we've automatically laid down, and the ANF account that I need to point to the ANF layer, all of these have been configured for us in the first implementation. So this gets us the first, hey, I only have one site to do. I can have the real easy deployment. We have 2 screens that we go through. VDS handles the rest of the automation. And this is, to the level of detail I mentioned. You can have different resource groups if you want to for your host pools and your network and your login analytics. You can put them all in different places if you choose to. But by default, you can see it's all the same thing because we said, okay, I'm going to be real simple to start with for that piece of it. So that was site 1, but then we said, okay, well, I need to also handle my office overseas. Let's say we're in Singapore here for site 2. So for site 2, when I built it out, I said, okay, I'm not going to get all that creative. I'm going to stay with the same subscription. My user count probably isn't going to drive an API problem, so I'm going to stay with the same subscription. But I am going to change the network, right? So my network here, my VNet is the APAC one with a separate subnet. And I can do a different resource group. So in this case, I chose to keep all of my things in the same resource group, but I want a separate one for each site so that I can keep track of where all the elements and components for WVD are going to lie. Now, the other part of this is that we can have different administrators work with different levels or different locations, right? Some companies split administration across geographies, and we can split that across sites as well. Same thing on the Azure portal side. ARM allows us to give permissions at a very granular level to manage that, but within VDS, we have the choice of running all of these sites under the same VDS instance so that I don't have to segment it if I don't choose to. But it does allow me to do all those pieces. So I've done all this work to create the sites. How do I actually put that in play? So we'll go to the workspaces here, which is where we actually work with WVD. And if I want to go and look at my host pools, when I do a host pool, it's going to ask me which site do I want to put that in. So very similar concept to the WVD workspace, but allows us to add the host pool from here. So if we just do we won't build one out, but I'll just type in a couple things here. And you'll notice the first question it's going to ask me is which site on the VDS side should I put this in? So think of this as a one word label or very quick attribute that represents all the other configuration that I just looked at on the site side. Now those sites, as you can see, if I do all my work of getting all the GUIDs in there and all that kind of stuff, probably takes 10 or 15 minutes. VDS does all the network peering and stuff on the back end for me. So once I have that set up, I can reference it every time I do a deployment here. Now we've also gone the extra step of saying, okay, because a workspace is tied to a region, we're going to make that connection for you. So we can choose which one we want here. So let's say this is site 1, so I'm going to go with my standard workspace for that. And then we can do the normal selection here. You know, very similar to the, all the tools you see that can deploy a WVD host pool, whether it's the Azure portal or even some of the tools, the community tools that you guys have seen. And I go through here, I can pick the selections. The one thing I would also point out here is that I glossed over a very important part, and Kirk would have called me out on this if I didn't talk about it. What about the storage layer? Because obviously I don't want my user profiles flowing from London to Singapore. That doesn't make any sense. So what we've done at the host pool side is say, okay, if I want to override my default path for user profiles for the MSIX app attached locations, I can choose to have a different set of volumes for each site. And I can even override that at the host pool side. Because it makes sense for us to say, okay, per host pool, we may vary this. And what this allows us to do is say, okay, I want to take advantage of VDS doing all the work for me on FS Logic. So whenever I fire up a machine, it does the registry entries for FS Logic so that it points to the right place. I want to override my default for a customer or for a deployment, and I want to use a different UNC path. And because we are just treating ANF like a UNC path, VDS knows to go out and put this into the servers for this host pool. So the last element of our part architecture is that third column I showed in the slide is to say, okay, how do I get a UNC path in that will direct each one of these machines and the users that log into them into the right storage layer? And that's how we do that from here. So again, we don't have to do a lot of wiring here. VDS does the automation for the volumes on the back end for ANF. But once I have the path, I can paste it in here and I'm ready to go for that piece. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of layout. And once I do all the configuration, I'm all set. Now, I will mention for those who aren't familiar with the product, we do also support full image creation. Don't have time to go in that today, but if you're interested, we can to follow up with you on that piece of it. So we can select either a standard image from the marketplace, or if you're building customized images with VDS, it will allow you to pull that from the subscription as well. So those elements allow us to do as much as we can in VDS without having to jump out and go to different places within Azure to those pieces. And then the machine size is driven by the region that we're in. So if I pick in like a D2S V3 here, yeah, there we go. I'll just do a DS2 for that. So I can pick the machine size, I can pick the storage type for the boot drive, and then I can pick the image, whether it's one I built or one from the marketplace, and then I just tell it how many instances I want to build out, and it goes off and builds that host pool. So conceptually, very similar to what you do in Azure Portal. The big difference when we're talking about these pods or these sites is the site allows us to vary the underlying components and let VDS do the work of making sure that every time I'm addressing this particular host pool and the machines in this host pool, it knows how to change the attributes so that it's talking to the correct resource group, the correct network, and all the pieces that we take for granted that are part of the WVD. As David mentioned, that we touch so many things in Azure. Sometimes it's nice to have the control plane handle some of that consistently on the back end. So that's where we're going with our, sort of our scaling strategy, is to make sure that as we start talking about thousands of users or many locations. I have a customer that's running, I think, 280 different sites now on VDS, just because they have very restricted requirements for same Azure region, different network, and everything else is the same, but they've decided that they're going to use our sites to, again, create that segmentation and only focus on resource group plus VNet plus subnet are the only thing that's changed, but allows them to focus on that for one particular group of session servers. So the whole idea here is to be flexible enough to support any segmentation you want, but at the same time, keep it organized enough so that you're not creating a very confusing spaghetti-like infrastructure underneath. So that's what we're trying to get to for that piece of it. Would mention at the very end here, if you want to try any of this out, there was a question on, how do you try some of this stuff? NetApp does have a sandbox program. It's a 30-day sandbox. If you have a, if you have a implementation you want to try out on a concept, you can get in touch with Leanne, and she can help you get on that list. We're running about a week and a half backlog right now. Folks are it's very popular. People like to try their stuff out, but we are getting people into the sandboxes as quickly as we can, because I think, as we talked about at the top, it's one of those things where experiencing the technology and having the end user experience validated is really important to feeling comfortable as you roll it out into organizations. So definitely reach out to do that piece if it's of interest to you. Even if you just want to say, hey, how does this particular application work in a WVD setting? We've had people come in and just try a specific application set. And it's time limited to 30 days so that we don't, that we have as many people participate as we can, but it does typically give you enough time to figure out questions and just unknowns without having to spin up and burn your own Azure resources to do that. And that, I think we'll turn back to see if there's any questions.
do you do anything around kind of auto scaling and monitoring?
Yes. So good question on both of those. The auto scaling is for the auto scaling. Let me just go back there to our workspace, is driven by our control machine in the environment for this piece. So we have two elements of that. You can either do it at a full deployment level, so I can keep a workload schedule that turns the machines on and off at certain times. I can also do this at the host pool level. So I can say, okay, the accounting host pool, they're pretty standard folks. They come in at 8, they leave by 5. Versus the developers are on all the different times, so I'm going to leave their host pool on differently. So that's a scheduled approach. The live scaling allows us to change the rules for how we turn the servers on and off. So we monitor the stream of user logins, user logouts. So we're listening for the WVD activity stream to figure out whether or not to turn another machine on or not or off. And we set 3 simple rules for that. So we enable max number of users on a server. So this is the max users per shared host pool parameter that everybody's familiar with. And then as we add more users, we want to know how many users should I put on the next machine, right? So let's say a simple case here. Let's say this one, when I get to the 6th user on the first machine I'm filling, I'm using depth first, obviously here, 6th user, turn on the next machine and go from there. Now, if I have a time frame that I want to turn the users, extra servers on to anticipate user load, let's say I want a couple extra servers in the morning, I can do that. So if any of you guys are familiar and seen the roadmap from Microsoft, this is very similar to what they're going to introduce next year on the back-end WVD part, but we've been doing it since the beginning because we think the best thing you can do is leave the machines off if you're not using them cost efficiency-wise. I would also say that as we look at this is compute side. The next element of this that we've already started working on is that we can also vary the sizing and throughput of Azure NetApp files to support that congestion, because our feedback so far in the first, say, couple of years we've been using this is we tend to get a lot of congestion for read side in the morning and then write side in the afternoon. And ANF can be popped up in size to create greater throughput and then pop back down very quickly. So we use our scripted events to turn those up and down on a schedule so that you don't have to be waiting for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have to sit there waiting for the user profile to write back. So we do think that cloud, we call it cloud optimization, but the efficiency of using not only the compute side but the storage side, we tend to like to drive that from first a rule set and then from our feedback loop. To answer your second question, we have a product called Cloud Insights, and that's coming online with VDS integration very shortly here by the end of the year. So in that perspective, Cloud Insights is basically a big data collector with dashboard capability, and we're generating the data from 3 different places. The VDS API, so this guy here is everything I'm doing in the application here is also got a REST endpoint. So we can pull data from there. We're pulling data from the Azure API for resources that's native to Cloud Insights. It knows what a VM in Azure should look like, and it can give you all sorts of performance data from that end. And then an agent on the machines themselves that will give us per session and per application, per user performance data as well, everything down to the user latency flag, to disk latency, network latency, all that kind of stuff. That allows us to monitor the environment. So happy to come back to the group and sort of present that as a concise subject, because that's probably at least half an hour, 45 minutes to walk through all the different parts and pieces for that.
Okay, cool. Okay, has anyone got any questions for Mike, Leon, or Kirk, or Stefan?
We brought an army.
Brought an army, people.
Well, the cookies were promised. I think the virtual cookies was kind of a confusing part. You're supposed to bring your own cookies to the holiday get assembly. So would like to wish everybody happy holidays and good new year. Because if we don't talk to everybody again before the end of the year, definitely I would just echo what everybody said about this being a great group of folks to deal with. Community around WVD is really strong, and very interesting conversations all year long, even as we've been remote. Looking forward to when we get back together again to just see people in person.
Quick question, Mike.
Sure.
How does the licensing work?
Licensing is just like M365. It's per user, per month, per year, even multi-year, I think now. Have to keep track of the ordering people. But yeah, it's per user. And then depending on the model, either named user or concurrent user modeling, user licensing is available.
Yeah, and we will also be available through the Microsoft Marketplace.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions about that or you need a quote, please reach out to me. Yeah.
And we are in the marketplace today. The thing we're changing is we're going to do what's called Azure Transact, which allows us to be billed on the Azure bill so that you don't have to get a bill from NetApp. You can just pay Microsoft and they eventually pay us. So works out for everybody. And you do get credit if you are if you have a commitment with Azure or something like that. Azure Transact products do get a partial credit against that as well. So there's goodness for everybody if we get on the bill.
Brilliant.
Any more questions? Nope. Okay, good. Well, I just want to, obviously this is the last event of the year, so I just want to thank everyone for the support over the past couple of months. The community is an amazing place to be, and it's really good to have everyone involved, sort of driving conversations and stuff. So a big thank you. So we've already got the next sessions lined up, believe it or not. So this week, this one I was really struggling to find presenters for, but I've already got next month. So January session, we've got Trenton Ty from Control Up, and he's going to be presenting about how WVD integrates with Control Up, which will be a good session. If you've never spoken with Trenton before, very, very clever bloke. So that'll be a good session. And we've got Jim Moyle, who's going to be presenting about HA and DR with WVD. So that's going to be an interesting one. So I'll schedule that. So you've got a month to accept it or ignore it, or however one you do. So,
or to get your Lamborghini order in.
Or get the Lamborghini ordered. Yeah,
right. It could be that early.
I'm taking orders. Yeah. Okay. So this, we're going to do a Q&A. So if anyone's got any questions, don't have to be about the topics tonight. There's a lot of very clever people on this call. So if you want to ask anything around WVD, now is your chance. No, you're all hungry like me. So Kirk sent me a picture of his dinner before, and I've not had my dinner yet, so it made me very, very hungry.
I know. I feel very full and yeah, very happy.
Good.
So there was a question from Andrew. You got loads of questions today. Great questions as well. So any recommended reading blogs, people to follow? So I think we had an actual session on that before, didn't we? Had loads of people. So.
Yeah, we did. So what I could do, the presentation that David did, if it's okay with David, if he can send that to me and I can forward it on to people. And I'll also include all the links and stuff and send those out as well.
Yep. And of course, you got Neil, myself. Just reach out. We're happy to help along the way.
Yep. Okay.
And I do have to say, I think Kirk wins the sweater contest.
Oh,
so there's only two competitors. Sorry, Neil. He's got so much going on there that I just it could take us the whole hour and a half to see that.
He wins it by a long, long, long way.
It's very hot in here, though. I'm in the top floor and the heat rises. So
we even got the theme going. You got the snow going in the background. That's solid.
There we go. Solid effort.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good Christmas and a New Year, and we'll speak to you all in January. January is I've got a sinky feeling the first couple of months are going to be very busy for WVD. We've got a lot of things that are in preview at the moment. They're going to go GA, and we've got some more features coming into preview as well. So it's going to be good.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. See you the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.